This is the voice of San Francisco. I am John Rothman, and I want to talk to you today about an issue overseas which is impacting all of us locally. That has to do with what is happening in the Middle East: Gaza, Israel, Hamas, the hostages, and all the rest. I want to address this on a local level because it has affected UC Berkeley, San Francisco State University, and Sonoma State, among other schools. I mean, St. Mary's just had a demonstration. It's everywhere. And you have no doubt read the story of Sonoma State University President Mike Lee, who has been placed on administrative leave after unilaterally announcing terms of an agreement with pro-Palestinian student protesters dealing with divestment from Israeli firms. Now, I'm simplifying it, but I want you to know that immediately the response was, what is he doing? I understand that there is anger and upset about what is happening in the Middle East. I also understand that the students who have been protesting in what is now being called a tentifada, that's a play on the word intifada, because these are tents being set up, has now extended to the idea of BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel. Please note that this is not a new effort. Boycott, divestment, and sanctions have been pushed for years by those who want Israel destroyed. Now, I must tell you, frankly, that what is happening now is an attempt to extend this campaign to divest from Israel as a way of punishing Israel for its existence. Please note, I said for its existence, because the goal of divestment and sanctions and boycott is the elimination of Israel from the map. That's right. We hear the chants on the campus, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And years ago, our oldest son, Samuel, who is now 31, I took him along to a demonstration, a pro-Palestinian demonstration. And he heard the chant. And he said to me, "Daddy, what does that mean?" And I said, well, the river is the Jordan, and the sea is the Mediterranean, and everything in between is Israel. And Samuel said to me, what they're saying is that Israel does not have a right to exist. And I said, you are precisely correct. He's never forgotten that moment, and neither have I. What bothers me is not the outrage that people feel about the war in the Middle East. What bothers me is the lack of outrage about the hostages which are still being held by Hamas, and the rape and death and destruction of October the 7th. It is hypocritical to me and reveals the true face of what is going on. And it's not just the Middle East. It's not just Northern California. It's happening all over the world. It is an attempt to discredit Israel, which is a legitimate nation in the world. Israel just celebrated its independence, what is known in Hebrew as Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israeli Independence Day. And at the same time, the Palestinian community, Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, and Palestinians in general celebrate what they call the Nakba, the disaster, the destruction of what they view as a Palestinian national state. Well, technically, there was no Palestinian national state. There was a decision by the United Nations on November 29, 1947, to partition Palestine, then a mandate administered by Great Britain, into two states, one Arab and one Jewish. The Arab community, under the leadership of Hajj Amin al-Husseini, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, rejected out of hand any compromise, any two-state solution. They said absolutely not. Israel, on the other hand, accepted the idea of a two-state solution, land for Jews and land for Arabs. That is where we are again today. Because when you hear the chants, free, free Palestine, they don't include the idea of Israel and Israel's right to exist. Indeed, one of the most disturbing things to me is that there is no two-state solution possible as long as the Palestinians claim only a one-state solution. And that's what Hamas claims. And that's what too many in the Palestinian Authority claim. But what I don't get, what I don't understand, is why these simple facts make no difference to the students demonstrating around the world, but in particular here in Northern California. That's what bothers me. It is the attempt to negate the right of Israel to exist as a nation. It is a call for the destruction. It is politicized, the call for a destruction of an existing state. And I would remind you, there is no other state in the world for whom there are calls for its destruction. That's what bothers me about what's going on now. And I do believe, and I think it's a safe thing to say, that most students do not support boycott, divestment, or sanctions. Most students support the right of Israel to exist as a nation. Most students support Palestinian rights, but not at the expense of Israel's right to exist. I am not upset about President Mike Lee being put on administrative leave at Sonoma State. What I am upset about is that there is not a universal demand for the release of the hostages, for the condemnation for what Hamas has done, and even more directly, a condemnation for the fact that Hamas says, given the opportunity, they would do it again. That's what bothers me. Now, it is true that this world is filled with complex problems, and many of those problems are isolated from many people. But this problem has now intruded on our college and university campuses right here in San Francisco, and in Berkeley, and in Sonoma, and, frankly, around the Bay Area. Let's be clear. Students have a right to protest, and they have a right to be indignant over innumerable things. But isn't there a double standard when there is indignation about what Israel may or may not have done, but there is no indignation about what Hamas and the Palestinians have done and continue to do? I raise this issue on the Voice of San Francisco because we do not live in a bubble. We are affected by things beyond our control. I am in favor of legitimate discussion. I am in favor of legitimate debate. I am in favor of people expressing their point of view. But I am not in favor of what we are seeing now on the campuses. This ad hominem criticism of Israel and its right to exist. We should be better than that, and our students should be better than that. Let us hope that on the Voice of San Francisco, we can deal with these questions effectively, whether they are local, state, national, international, because, as I said, we don't live in a bubble. I am John Rothmann, and you are listening to the Voice of San Francisco, a voice deeply disturbed, deeply upset, and deeply caring. Peace is what we want, peace and justice for all. I'm John Rothmann, and you are listening to the Voice of San Francisco.